welcome again to this webinar with our special guest, Kevin Tan. I'm Gerry Murray from Wide Circle, and I worked back in 2003. And I've known Kevin now for over 10 years through the association with Harrison Assessments, and we've had a very positive, productive, and constructive working relationship. And who is Kevin? So Kevin is coming in today from, I hope it's Kuala Lumpur. So Kevin has more than two decades of experience in assessments and talent management and leadership consulting, coaching, etc., and specializes in the application of Harrison Assessments behavioral profiling tool for individual, team, and organizational leadership development. And so he's been with Harrison Assessments for almost 30 years now, it looks like, from 1995. And he's also the director of, today, Director of International Business Development, and he's a managing director of OmniView Consulting. So Kevin was involved in Harrison way back in the early days in Malaysia. He was a country manager for Malaysia. Today, he oversees all our international business development. And today he's going to talk about leadership readiness. He's going to introduce us to how you can use data or data to support your decision making. And he will be using some examples from real clients that he's worked with over the years. So I would suggest that we, if you've got questions, put them in the Q&A. There's a button for that, or even the chat, and we'll come to the Q&A towards the end. So I want to give Kevin a good half an hour or so, 35 minutes to present his stuff. Write your questions down and we'll take them at the end. I will be looking at the chat from time to time, and we're going to make this a little bit interactive. We'll be asking you to give input every so often, and I hope that you'll do that in the spirit of collaboration and sharing. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Kevin Tan.
Hi, good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Thanks, Gerry, for organizing this webinar session here today. So let me just share with you the title today, which is Leadership Readiness with 3 P and E. I'll talk more about that. It's a new model. I'm sure it's not new to some of you after I've explained the concept. Today's objective is to share how we can use data to drive our succession readiness planning for highlighting and identifying high potentials and high performers. A bit about Harrison. We started about 30 years ago. At the moment, we have about 42 assessment languages, and the reports are generated in 26 languages. There are about 25 reports, and one very unique characteristics of Harrison Assessments is we measure 175 behavioral traits and factors. We'll get more into that in a while. For more details, you can always visit our website at www.harrisonassessments.com. What makes us unique is we measure both eligibility and suitability. In short, we look at what a person can do from experience, expertise, and past training certifications, as well as what they are willing and enjoy doing, which is suitability factors. And all of these are integrated into the system where we are able to put weightages on the importance of eligibility and suitability that differs from jobs to jobs. We have our proprietary methodology, which is enjoyment performance theory, that essentially says when someone enjoys doing something, they do it more. The more they do it, they get better, they improve, and it motivates them when they get praises and recognized for their ability. That gives them a very strong reinforcing positive cycle, and the reverse is also true. The other proprietary technology created by Dr. Harrison is the paradox technology, which looks at two virtues or two values which are independent of each other. And when they are placed in a matrix that looks like this on those two scales, both gentle and dynamic scales or values are able to explain more about the person's behavior and identifying what we know as genuine strengths, which is a display of balance, versatility, or high balances in both the values or virtues, or the reverse of out of balance virtues or out of balance behaviors, which may result in unconscious behaviors like emotional derailers, or what we call flips, which is either fight or flight behaviors under stress. The other unique characteristic with Harrison is we only have one questionnaire that captures all 175 factors within 25 minutes, including an engagement survey with fulfillment data. Harrison offers 4 solution pillars: acquiring talent or talent acquisition, talent development, talent engagement, and talent leadership development. For today's purpose, we are only going to be looking at leadership development, focusing on succession planning and how do you derive data from the Harrison system to create your 9-box performance potential matrix. Now, I'm going to hand it over to Gerry right now so that he can run a quick poll on some questions about where do you sit right now on your talent bench strength. Over to you, Gerry.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. So the first question I'm actually going to launch just one question really briefly, just to get a sense of who's here and what you know about Harrison. This one we ask on every webinar just to know who's here. So it'll only take you a second or two to do this. And then we've got a couple of questions on the bench strength coming up after this. So I'm just going to put the poll up now. Thank you. I think most people have contributed now. Okay, so I see that you all have an awareness of Harrison. Many of you are Harrison coaches and consultants yourselves, and we have some clients here as well. So I'm going to end the poll now. Just if you bear with me for a second, I'm just going to launch the bench strength now for Kevin. Okay. And okay, so in this we've got 3 questions, and please let us know your answers. If you're a Harrison consultant, you can also maybe fill it out on behalf of your
of your clients.
The clients
Some of the clients, I'm sure you. That's right. Thanks, Gerry. You took the words right out of my mouth. Timing.
Okay, so we have the first question. If you scroll down, there's a second and a third question. Okay, just allow a little bit more time for everybody to answer, because there's 3 questions, of course. It takes a bit more time to do this. Okay, so I'm going to end this poll and we'll look at the results of it now. Here we go. So can you see the results? Kevin, can you see the results?
Yep.
Okay.
I've got a good idea. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Well, at least they've come to the right session to talk about behavioral assessments and interviewing, so that will be helpful. All right. Okay.
So now we'll let you back to Kevin. Okay, I'm going to close my microphone.
Thank you. All right. So thanks for that quick poll, everyone. So let's share the top 5 failures in leadership pipeline and succession planning in most organizations. Clearly, the first one is that there is no succession plan. That's very obvious. Number 2 is over-reliance on a single leader. A lot of leaders are as we all know, the leader sets the pace. So when, especially for charismatic leaders, it's very difficult to replace them. And if you look at some of the top companies today, there's the Magnificent Seven and the Granolas. You can check it out. They have some leaders who are extremely charismatic, extremely successful. The question is that how can they continue and sustain the company should they not be there tomorrow? Right. The third failure for leadership pipeline and succession planning is cultural misalignment. So sometimes when we parachute leaders from external companies to come in, there's a high risk that they can't fit the culture, and that's also a cause for failure. Most of the time when a new leader takes on the new reins, there is resistance to change by the existing people, obviously different styles, different approaches. One name comes to mind is, I'm sure when you remember the famous Jack Welch from GE, when he handed the reins to Jeffrey Immelt, it was basically a big, huge transition that did not turn out too well. That's one example. There are many I'm sure you can think of. And the last one is inadequate investment into leadership development programs from the company. So today, the topic will be on leadership development solutions by Harrison. And these are our top 5 clusters that consist of 10 leadership competencies. These are Harrison's global sets of library of competencies that has been in use over 10 years and has been validated with companies, large companies, both local, regional, and multinational across the globe, where they have used our in-house set of leadership competencies. If they didn't have their own, they are more than welcome to use the 5 clusters that are broken down into 10 individual competencies. As you can see, these are mainly used for assessing customizable behavioral competencies, succession planning, and performance potential readiness. The following slide is a model. Of course, this is not the model, but this is one of the models we have found to have been very effective in sharing with our clients on how they could use data to drive and create their 9-box talent performance potential matrix. So the first criteria is to always determine what constitutes performance and what constitutes potential within your company. One of the questions was in the quick poll was, what do you use to measure performance? And some of you said annual performance rating. That could be one. The other one would be hard facts of like KPIs for sales. Those are all measurable KPIs and measurable ratings. Targeted job success factors. That's very important when we are setting the criteria, is to identify what are the critical success factors for the targeted position. For those of you who are familiar with the Harrison concept, we have the essential traits, desirable traits, and avoid traits, which then can be used to build up a job success formula. And finally, what are the leadership competencies that you require for your future leaders? And these are all customizable within the system. The second step is to conduct the assessment itself. Conducting Harrison online takes only 25 minutes. Case studies can be 1 hour to 2 hours with multiple assessors. Competency-based interviewing or behavioral event interviewing can take about 1 hour to 1 hour and a half. Both these exercises are time-consuming and resource-heavy. They do come at quite a considerable cost because you require assessors, either internal, external, or a hybrid mix of both, to conduct case studies and evaluate them, write up the reports, as well as give recommendations on observations. Same thing goes for CBI and the BEI as well. The other one would be a 360 survey, which you can do either full 360 or 270, 180 in any of those derivatives, depending on how many raters and ratees you will be conducting. Again, it is a massive exercise which has to be planned well because it takes time away from individuals, both the ratees and the raters, especially if you have got an employee with multiple raters. Finally, Step 3 would be to create the 9-box grid, plotting the performance and potential on the 9-box and defining the categories, which I'm going to show you very quickly after this, the 9 categories within the 9-box. And most importantly, why are we doing all of this, which is to develop the learning and development strategies for each of those categories based on individualized roadmap for improvement and getting to where they need to go. So this is an example of a 9-box matrix. There are some samples in there. These are just some data which are from our client. The 2 reports which we use for measuring potential would be the job success formula, which is the one here, matching the person against the targeted job to look at their job suitability, as well as the leadership competency on the right-hand side that is called behavioral competency analysis. Now, both these reports would form a weighted average on the potential scale, while on performance, you could be putting that on performance rating from the manager, from the company, or specific projects where the person has been personally involved and there has been measurable outcome, which can also take a weighted factor within performance scores itself. I won't go through too much of these details. It's general knowledge, the definition of each of those 9 categories, from star performer to a solid performer to a core player, as well as to someone who's a high risk, which is low performance, low potential, where there's a high risk of mismatch in the role, and this person could be a roadblock for performance or moving up in the role. All right. Now, these are 2 examples of actual data from 2 different companies. One is a bank and the other one is a manufacturing company. And the difference that which I like to show everybody is how you can be creative in using the 9-box in this manner. So on this left-hand matrix, you will see it's a potential and performance. On the vertical scale, it's always performance. And on the horizontal scale is leadership competency score. On the far right matrix, you'll be able to see a different matrix, which is measuring role suitability against a future role and the interaction of those scores with the individual's leadership competency score, which is potential. Now, when you look at those 2 different scales, you can then draw out very different data and insights into the person's future suitability for the targeted role and the potential for assuming leadership role. Those 2 things are very different. Now, if we were to integrate those 3 scores onto a 3D diagram, as what you see on the screen, we would be able to look at every employee, there are 10 of them here, and putting them on a 3-point scale into a 3D where potential, a position has a score, individual score, performance has a score as well, and potential has a score. So I would like you to just take a view and take your time to just look at this report, because there will be another layer of information coming up very soon. You can see where the scores indicate an individual as A, having a 90% on performance, which is around here. Potential is around 70, which is on the vertical scale. And position suitability for the targeted role is about 90. And with that, I'm going to just bring you to the next consideration in preparing a leadership readiness matrix. What about, have you thought about, you've identified the right candidate, say for example, either A or B, and you find out that they are not keen on taking up that position, or you find out that they could be looking out elsewhere, where for greener pastures. Flight risk is always a reality for high performers, because high performers will always not be short of opportunities to move on. So how do we address flight risk? And this is where our model of 3P and E comes into place, where we look at how we measure engagement and fulfillment level in addition to the leadership readiness matrix. So in Harrison, we have 3 E's on employee engagement. First, it's important to understand the expectations of every individual. The next would be to evaluate how those fulfillment levels are met so that we are able to enrich those gaps by having conversations with them and finding out what are the most effective ways to bridge those fulfillment gaps. This is an example of the engagement employment expectation report generated in Harrison. And in this case here for Andrew, he scores 58% on the scale of fulfillment, which is unfulfilled unfulfilled levels in certain areas of expectations. It might be a bit small for you, but just let me read it out. If you look at the third box from the left, in authority expectations, Andrew has a 9.6 on one's autonomy, but only a 40% fulfillment level. He has a 9.2 on wants to lead. However, he is only 30% fulfilled. These two examples, if we were to combine with, going back to the data earlier, assuming we have Andrew as A, which has a very strong potential to be a high performer for succession planning, or B for that matter, and we find out that Andrew has only a 58% on his engagement fulfillment level. This is going to be a flight risk for the company because you may or may not know that Andrew is clearly unhappy or unfulfilled in his current role, even though he may be a high performer or with high potential. So what we have done here is to put another layer of data in addition to the data that you've seen earlier on, which is engagement levels. All right. So assuming Andrew was A, he has 90% suitability for the targeted position. He's got 95% performance rating, 70% potential for leadership values that aligns to the culture. However, engagement is only at 55%. So this is going to be a risk factor or flight risk, as we have just explained, for the company. Now, without this data placed or presented this way, it will be almost impossible for a company that, say, for example, has 200 employees as their top potential talent. It will be very difficult to slice the data by just looking at performance or potential without considering the suitability for the targeted role, and in addition, an additional layer of data, which is engagement fulfillment levels. So what we have done is that we have now created 4 data points on a 3D map like this, which the vertical color on this scale here shows the percentages of fulfillment on engagement. So the different scales gradient on this green bar shows how fulfilled or unfulfilled an individual is. And you can see clearly that for for A and D, they are not very well fulfilled in their current roles. All right. So I'm just going to take a pause here and ask if there are any questions from the group. Gerry, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Kevin, for quite short and sweet and to the point, very concise and informative explanation. I am looking in the Q&A. Nobody has asked a question yet, and I suspect there may be some questions about usage of this data. We've also been using a version of this when we run assessment centers for our clients, and they find it incredibly useful, particularly as you point out, when you add in position and the engagement aspect, because this gives them such an enriched perspective. A rich perspective. It actually enriches their perspective because they see things sometimes which helps them understand better the dynamic for that individual. Just because somebody's showing performance and potential, they may, as you say, be also considering other roles. We've also used a version of this for recruiting as well, and the engagement scores help enormously in how they're going to approach a potential candidate that they like, because sometimes a candidate is leaving the other company, they're leaving their boss, and it becomes very clear from this report you're showing now the kinds of factors that may be at play there. And then if they have a candidate that's actually very fulfilled in their current job, of course, the question is what's going on here, but that candidate may still be looking to see what other opportunities are out there. But our clients tell us that they have going to have totally different types of conversations with those two types of client. The one that has low fulfillment in their current job, the one has high fulfillment in their current job. It changes the color of how they view the client and the type of conversation they will explore with them in maybe behavioral event interview or competency interview. So have we got some questions coming in now?
Sorry, Gerry, I just want to add another point. Sometimes when a person has a sort of a low engagement, for example, in this case, A, it might not necessarily be just a flight risk. It could be also a case of talent hoarding. And I'm not sure if, I'm sure the audience are familiar with the term called talent hoarding, where a person is a high performer. So in this case, clearly A is a highest performer at 95%, has potential, maybe not as high, but still significantly considerable high potential, high suitability for the targeted role, but a very moderate average fulfillment level. So I could also put a version of this, which is a possibility for talent hoarding by some supervisors, where they keep the best, highest performance to themselves, and therefore suppressing their opportunities to grow in the company. So one of the things which is what we can do using this example here is for companies with multiple sites and many layers of hierarchy, where the talent development or talent management department sits in head office, doesn't have line of sight or clear visibility of who are the top talents in other footprints within the company, within the region or outside of the region. We could use data like this to start identifying what's the reason a high performer like A, with high suitability for future role, high potential for leadership, has only a moderate engagement. So something doesn't add up. So either the supervisor is not doing enough to create that interaction and engagement with A, or A just feels left out. And this is where data such as this particular report, where we can get into the nuts and bolts, the real details of what is causing low engagement in Andrew. For example, if we look at one's advancement, not in this case though, just imagine if Andrew had a high one's advancement at 10 and it was only 30% fulfilled. Just imagine one's development was 9 and only 40% fulfilled. Now in that case, this would be a very clear intervention need by head office HR to get into the supervisor's room and say, hey, look, what's going on between you and Andrew? Andrew doesn't look like he's being noticed, or he doesn't get opportunities to move up. Can you tell us what are your plans for Andrew? So what we are trying to say here, whoops. What we're trying to get at here is giving data to the line managers, and more importantly, putting data that is timely and relevant and effective and accurate to the HR department, specifically the talent and learning development department, to be able to bring this to the right individuals and their supervisors to start getting the right conversations going. All right.
Kevin, we have a question in the chat. or a point coming from, I can't see who is from, Oan, I think is how it's pronounced. Engagement can be impacted by many factors. How do we know what factors impact on engagement?
All right. You're right on. There are more factors than what you're looking at right now. Clearly, in Harrison's terms, these are the engagement factors that we measure, specifically the dark blue traits. The dark blue traits are expectations of the employees, and the light blue traits are the supporting behaviors to measure how strong the individual employee's willingness and desire is to achieve their expectations. For example, in this case, Andrew's wants development is 9.0, which is second highest, and his enthusiastic and self-improvement is moderately strong, which is not too bad, and that explains that Andrew has sufficient, not excessively high, but sufficient level of enthusiasm and willingness to improve himself. So whether that is enough or not to achieve what he wants to do to grow further, that has to be a conversation taking place between the supervisor and him. Another question from Amy is, could it be because he has only a 30% fulfillment with wants to lead? Well, in this case here, his wants to lead is clearly unfulfilled. So one of the areas that could be but is a strong area of unfulfillment for Andrew is that he has a high desire to lead, but for reasons that we do not know, again, we're only looking at a score. The reasons that we do not know, he feels that he has not been given sufficient opportunities to take on leadership roles that are meaningful to him. Now, whether has that been given in the past that he did not step up, or that he has not shown enough of effective leadership qualities, or he has been given opportunities but it didn't go on too well, that remains to be unseen until a conversation is taken place. So as a HR, I could see that you're a coach. So if you wanted to help Andrew and facilitate improve the engagement level between Andrew and his supervisor as a coach, you could be zooming into this specific area and start working on one or two areas that is going to give the biggest leverage in improving overall engagement. All right. Barbara, is the 3P and 1E model Harrison's or Kevin's model? It's something I created for Gerry for the talk. So I think over the last couple of weeks when we started brainstorming about what would make this talk interesting, is that we know that we've got the data. I think, Barbara, I'm not sure if you're an existing Harrison client already or a consultant, but if you look at the reports, I'm sure you will find that it's nothing new. You would already be very familiar with the reports like JSA, which is the Job Success Analysis Report for targeted roles, the behavioral competency that measures the leadership values or leadership competencies, the performance rating, which you clearly can get from the company, and engagement score. So it's just a matter of how you can put that together and make it meaningful and insightful for the client.
Can I comment on that as well? We at Wide Circle developed about over 3 years ago now, a version of this, which we call the 3PP model, but essentially it's the same elements for creating a really well-defined data structure around assessment centers, and how Harrison would created what we called a choice point for our clients. So typically, clients want to do more than just questionnaires. Kevin showed they want to do case studies and they want to do all that. That's very time consuming and very expensive. And what some of our clients who used to do that discovered that if we did a very comprehensive look on the with using Harrison data and their own data, if they provide it, they could come to a choice point, and then they could decide whether they needed to go deeper into, and add on some more assessments, or whether that gave them enough to have the first conversations. And it's proved to be very successful for us. So I think this is anyone out there who works with the Harrison tools, either as a consultant or coach or an in-house person. There's such great data available to you. It's possible to create your own models that fit in your own environment, or to create your own models for supporting the work you do with your clients. So it's not so complicated as you see, once you have a clear methodology. That's good for you, Kevin. Yeah, that's because we're finding this is really shows how powerful this Harrison data can be. And honestly, if you're just plotting a 9-box on the traditional measures, and you're just using kind of opinions and subjectivity, it can be hit or miss. Whereas actually, most investment decisions in organizations are made based on data. Ask any CFO; they'll tell you they don't make multi-million dollar or euro investments without looking at data. And if you think about a leader who's going to grow and in a business, if you just look at their direct salary over a period of 5 or 6 years, you're probably well over $1 million in many of our economies. And then what impact are they going to have on your business? How many other millions or billions are they going to impact? And yet sometimes I personally find it very fascinating when decisions are made without really quality data that helps the decision makers think and really challenge and question, is this the right thing for this person at this time, etc.
So just to add on to that, what Gerry has said is a very important methodology that we subscribe to at Harrison, which is we try to put assessments that has the highest value but takes the least amount of time, money, and resource, that would cover as many people as we possibly could get to complete the questionnaire or any assessment for that matter, without getting into too much of time and resource. For example, case studies and CBI, or behavioral event interviewing, is very useful. Having said that, they are expensive, they are resource intensive, and they take lots of time from the assessors to prepare reports and all of those. But nonetheless, we're not saying that you don't do without it. You do that only for the ones that matters, or the candidates that matters. But you would cast the net out wider with assessment tools. For example, in HA, it takes only 25 minutes, half an hour the most, and maybe 360 version, a 360 survey that is not too overly complicated. Once you've gotten some data, and you then start to funnel down to maybe half of the size, and then putting them, the nominated and the qualified ones, to more rigorous assessment process, which is either case study, business simulation, and even with BEI. We have clients that even put the shortlisted candidates through Business Canvas, which is one of the other polls, which I think we should be running, but I think we have not done that, Gerry.
We can do that now.
There's another poll very quickly. Gerry's going to show you another poll of the different tools that you might be using or may have considered using in the past.
Yeah, and just as I'm launching it here, just to add to what Kevin said, apart from this great value, for money, actually, I'm now distracted myself, so I'm going to launch the poll first, and I'll add the question in a minute. Apart from the value for money, you're actually reaching, you're treating people as equal when you, for diversity, etc. You're really casting the net much wider than normal. And we have trained our clients how to do this, so they take out a lot of that perception of expensive consultants, and they're able to run these things. And I've seen clients do some amazing things with this once they realize the power of it. So let me launch the poll. So once again, either if you're not a corporate, if you could maybe answer this on behalf of your typical clients, what you find
Yeah.
are the key reasons preventing succession planning and what measurements are available.
Yeah. The other point, just to add on to what Gerry has said, getting more people to do it for diversity reasons, is to also look at potentially getting a stock take on your talent inventory. Some of the talents that are what I call a latent talent. They are there, they are high potential, but they are a very rough diamond, well hidden in the haystack, and we can't find them. So this could be a good opportunity to use talent identification as a process to get as many employees as possible, even though some of the bosses or supervisors may think that they are not ready. But everyone is unique and have their own gifted talents. Who knows? So if we were to be able to use the most efficient, effective, and yet cost-effective, time-saving method to get as many people to have data within our inventory, that allows us to have a talent inventory which we can then draw from, especially to identify latent talent and identify where talent hoarding may be happening.
Okay, so the poll is ended, and I'll show the results.
Yeah. So lack of time and resources, there you go. It is a time-consuming exercise. Insufficient leadership pipeline. Well, that's possibly because you're not casting the net wide enough. And this is, again, a possible scenario of latent talent, or not knowing that you've got some rough diamonds lying around, not knowing where they are. So cast the net wider. Inadequate training and development programs. That's probably everyone's main topic as well, main challenge. So we need to make sure that for the training and development programs that we can run, we must make sure that they have a high return on investment. So therefore, customizing or identifying what programs is going to yield the biggest performance improvement is going to be crucial for C-suites to take note of the kind of investment and future investment that is needed to carry out these development programs.
Right? And I comment on that as well, where our clients have used the Harrison data in the analytics dashboards to look at, it's easy to take a population and just use the 10 baseline Harrison competencies to see where you have perhaps quite a collective strength in an area and where you have a very obvious weakness, and to even using the traffic light system of green, yellow, or green, amber, and red to see what types of learning and development interventions would be needed. And I've done this with open public workshops with up to 30 HR professionals and asked them to come up with their recommendations for their learning and development. And the overwhelming, first of all, they're very creative and they very, very well understand it. But the overwhelming thing is, why don't we have this data in our organization? Because so much money is thrown at L&D and people don't know whether it makes any difference or not. And sometimes this is a big challenge, is that people say, well, we need to have these 10 different types of programs. But the question is, does everybody need to go on them, et cetera, et cetera? So sorry, Kevin, I'll let you back to the results again.
Yeah. One size doesn't fit all, in short. The next measurement shows that the matrix that is most critical would be retention rates. For high potentials, that's flight risk, right? So every employer or every organization knows that if they've got high potential, they are already on the target from other competitors. So retention rate is not just losing your employees. Retention rate is not losing your top employees to your top competitor. That's more painful and more detrimental to business. So flight risk here is about measuring whether do your high potential employees have healthy level engagement fulfillment levels. And I think we've covered that with great detail. All right. I think one more question before we end the session today. There is a question in chat box today. I think it's from Ms. On. I'm still a little bit double when we do a one time of answering the questionnaire, but using all reports of Harrison? Why don't we have separate questionnaire for each report? Well, maybe just a point of clarification. You don't have to generate all the reports. There are 25 reports. You can generate any one at one point in time. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Ms. Ang. If you can clarify your question, I think you might be asking, why do we need to generate all reports? There's no need to generate all reports. You can generate one or two or three, up to your choice. The questionnaire itself has to be done at one go, because as I mentioned earlier on, we capture 175 factors, including engagement factors. And it's important to note that the assessment is not the questionnaire. All right. The questionnaire is a method that we use to collect, or even we could say it's a survey that we use to collect all the traits and factors inventory in our system. All 175 factors are captured at the point of completing the questionnaire that takes 25 minutes. Once the 175 factors is captured within our system, each time when you generate different reports, the system puts on a different lens or filter or criteria to generate the assessment report that you need. For example, if you need a sales manager job suitability match, the system draws out only factors related to a successful and high-performing sales manager into the report called Job Success Analysis with a suitability score, and that is your assessment report. All right? So hopefully that clarifies that question. Back to you, Gerry.
Yep. I think I've heard you explain that many times, Kevin, and I think many assessments. A classic one is the MBTI. You do the questions, it's 75 questions or whatever, and it produces 4 letters, and that's it. It doesn't do anything else for you. And it still takes at least half an hour, 45 minutes. And when you think of Harrison as a data gathering tool, that then the data can be modeled through standard reports or through dashboards and that, then you have something really, really powerful. So I would like to thank everyone who has attended today, and those who haven't been able to attend but are watching this or have watched this recording. I'd like to thank you for watching the recording, but more importantly, I'd like to thank Kevin Tan for being generous with his time. It's quite dark where he is now in Asia, and for those of you in Asia who stayed up late to come in and listen and watch this, I also thank you for that. Leadership readiness with 3P and E. And let us know if some things come up for you in this and you want to have further clarifications, please reach out to us. And without further ado, I think, Kevin, thank you very much.
Thanks, Gerry, for organizing this webinar today. And thanks to everyone for attending. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.